All right. Make sure that was on. You guys hear me okay? Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. Since we had a closed session earlier today or earlier this evening, no call to order. Just welcome to everybody joining the board meeting. So I'd like to start out this board meeting a little bit different tonight. So it's a non-traditional start, but as you'll see, I believe we have an important crossroads that we're at that deserves a different approach. So with that in mind, I have a statement that I'd like to read on behalf of the board to the entire LNC community. So teachers, staff, students, parents, and families. On behalf of the board of directors, welcome back to 5 full days of week of in-person instruction. Let's take a moment to acknowledge how far we've come. It is truly a reason to celebrate. I want to thank all of you for adapting and changing with us so many times as we have navigated the pandemic. We have largely kept our community safe and maintained a level of instruction enviable by many school districts. It hasn't been perfect, but it has been comparatively remarkable. I am incredibly proud of my 5+ years now on LNC's board. I have seen the LNC community come together to build an elementary school, enhance our main campus, and navigate a pandemic, just to name a few. However, I'm not proud of the culture change in our community that I've witnessed over the last 18 months. We understand that change is difficult. The pandemic is stressful and emotions are running high. But this tension has spilled over to the way we treat each other, and it has to end. We greatly appreciate so many of you who reach out to the administration with constructive solution-based feedback on a variety of school issues, including carpool, homework, dress code, and the pandemic-related protocols. We need you. We are better, and we can make better decisions when we have full awareness from all perspectives. But far too often, we receive feedback in the form of nasty communications and degrading social media posts, which do nothing other than damage the school, teachers, administrators, and the broader LNC community. As we start the school year, I commit to you on behalf of the board that we will continue to have the best interests of your students and community at heart. We listen, or we promise to listen, and to hold ourselves and our leadership accountable to a safe, successful year. We will approach our work collaboratively. We will assume positive intent. We will give each other the benefit of the doubt, and we will treat all community members with dignity and grace. We humbly and passionately ask that you do the same. There will be times when we or the administration make a necessary change or difficult decision that you don't agree with. Please remember that we all share the common goal of doing what's best for our students and this community. Rather than attacking individuals or spreading anger and negativity, let's positively and collaboratively find a way through it. Together, we can be better. We are also proud of our tradition of academic excellence at LNC. That's why we entered the lottery or chose to work or volunteer here. We didn't get to our national and local rankings by accident, nor did we receive an A from the state every year since 2013 through luck. Those things happen because our culture has attracted the best administrators and teachers. They truly care about our kids. They push them to grow and coach them with lifelong skills to find happiness and success. We can continue this tradition of excellence and assure its long-term sustainability, but we need to find our way back to being a strong, supportive community where together we learn, lead, and serve as our motto promises. Let's pledge to always model a positive approach for our children and our greater community so that our culture can be just one more reason families love to be a part of LNC. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to our normal business. First up, we have the approval of our minutes.
This is Amy. I approve the August 12th board meeting minutes. Second.
Okay. Any other questions or further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, next up, we have support group updates. PTO.
I did not receive a report from the PTO, so I'll check in with them and we'll hopefully have one for next month.
Okay. All right, Mr. Schlegel, you're up.
Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. I just pretty short. We're up and running. The fall season's been going great on our end. All of our teams have been able to participate in games up to this point. Unfortunately, we did lose our home opening Friday night game for tomorrow with Christ the King. They've had an issue on their end, but we were able to reschedule that for a couple weeks down the road. So we did not lose that home game. We're just pushing it off a little bit. The boosters rolled out their ticket spigot, which is our online digital app to buy your tickets. We are going to continue to use cash this fall with hopes of going fully digital for admissions starting this winter. I'm excited about it. Most of the schools in the state are starting to head that direction. The NCHA, which is a governing body of North Carolina sports, actually did a poll a few weeks ago, and it seems that most schools are actually heading this direction. It's a great idea. It's a great way to get the cash out of people's hands, and everyone knows that phones and technology are the way of life now. So we're happy to get on board with that. And other than that, I think we're good.
All right. Maybe a little bit of a question to put you on the spot. So I've kind of read and heard some grumblings at the state level about a change coming to the NCHSSA. Just kind of curious if LNC is monitoring that, and if you've heard anything around the timing potentially.
We are, and Mr. Smith next to me is awesome with watching all that kind of behind the scenes, and he runs over and talks to me. It's kind of at a standstill right now. Craig, I know you might be able to jump in too, but it has gone through some of it, correct? But
it's HB 91 has garnered a lot of support from within the General Assembly, and it looks like it's going to be put into place where the state association is not going to be dissolved, is what it looked like it originally was going to be, but there's going to be definitely some legislative involvement moving forward. So there's a lot of elements to that, but frankly, from our standpoint, the major changes would kind of almost be status quo for us as far as classification and things like that. So we'll continue to stay abreast to it, but it looks like that is going to get passed, that we'll have new legislative involvement in the state association.
Could I have said it better myself?
So just to piggyback off of that, unfortunately, that bill also has some things that could be detrimental specifically to charter schools. And so we're monitoring and working with the coalition on some of that, because there are some special interests that want to see charter schools moved up even further in rankings. And then that would obviously affect our competitiveness and who we're playing, and safety, quite honestly. So just so you're aware, we are monitoring that and having some pretty good lobbying on that behalf to try to find something that would be amenable to charter schools.
And Shannon, if I'm thinking about that correctly, I believe the main concern was about students who are effectively recruited to charter schools through a quote job offer to a parent and receive preferential admission.
It is. And like a lot of things, you know, there's over 200 charter schools in the state, and some are probably playing it a little fast and loose. And there was some charter schools that were in D1 were quite honestly, winning a lot. And so there are some folks at the legislature that have concerns over that. You know, I assure you that Mr. Schlegel and his program is above board. And we've had, you know, folks that have tried to do that, and we are not going to subscribe to that, but we also don't want to be caught up in having some type of legislative thing come down that affects us when we're actually doing it right. And I would say the large majority of charter schools doing that right. So that's part of that is helping to educate legislatures that, you know, that exactly what does that look like, that we don't recruit, lotteries are real things, and those things are monitored. So hopefully we will get some traction on that.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, we have the school state report. Ms. Stein.
Yes, I get to start with the really fun, awesome thing. Speaking of exceptional teachers, we have Miss Kara Matoka with us. Miss Matoka, what year is this for you at LNC? Yeah, well, you can do both if you'd like. Tell us teaching in general and with us at LNC.
This is my 35th year teaching, and been at LNC since 2009.
Yeah. So, and really, her and the rest of our art department are extremely strong. I'm sure Maya would agree with that. But we have something that we have never had in the 23 years at Lake Norman Charter. So if that tells you how special the accomplishment of Maya Dabney is, and I'm going to turn that over to her and to Miss Matoka, and I'm going to put up on our overhead and for those at home so that they can see a couple of pictures, and Miss Matoka can talk through that. Maybe Maya wants to share some things about that, and we'll share her accomplishments. So you go right ahead, Miss Matoka, and explain a little bit about that, and I can always go back to the art piece as well.
So, you know, last year, obviously, difficult year. We're in a pandemic, and we're in the hybrid situation. And in December, we have the largest high school art and writing competition in the country. We have the opportunity, but it's so big that they do it by region. So we have to enter the regional competition first in December. And UNC Charlotte runs that competition. There are 38, I think, counties in North and South Carolina that enter the competition. So Maya says to me, I mean, honestly, Mrs. Hale and I were like, it's a pandemic. I don't know if we should enter it. Maya says, Miss Matoka, I think I want to enter the Scholastic Art Competition. And I said, okay, we'll do it. So she brings her artwork in. You know, we're on the hybrid schedule. We go through and decide what she's going to submit in that, because she kind of presented that opportunity to us. We also entered some other pieces. And in the regional competition, Maya won a gold key, a silver key, and an honorable mention. Nicole Kesnick, who was a senior last year, won 6 awards, a gold key, 2 silver keys, and 3 honorable mentions. And Abby Lake, who Mrs. Hale submitted her writing piece, she won a silver key for writing. The gold key winners actually move on to the national competition in New York. And so in May, they're judged. And in June, we find out, or in June, they had a celebration, and Maya won our very first national gold medal. So I actually have that. Looks like so it looks like a gold, I mean, it's a gold medal. It's very heavy. They sent, so Maya has one with the blue ribbon on it. This is the one that was sent to the school. So I'm going to have it framed. And the artwork that won is the printmaking piece, A Dream as Beautiful as You. And it is an extraordinary honor. It's a national, I mean, you know, competing with students all across the country. I will tell you how prestigious this is. High school students who have won this in the past: Steven Spielberg, Andy Warhol, Amanda Gorman. It's huge. And But I have to tell you one other thing about Maya. She was a 10th grader when she entered this competition. She's an 11th grader this year. She participated in 2 college art programs this summer. One was at Syracuse, one was at the University of Michigan. She shows me her portfolio, and I said, "How did you come up with the subject matter for this?" And she said, I just kind of pick things that I don't really know much about, but I want to learn more about. I want to research and learn more." And I thought, what an incredible growth mindset she has. And that's who we are. I mean, I just think, she's the epitome of an LNC student. And, our motto of learn, lead, and serve, and saying, I want to enter this competition. I'm honored to teach her and have her a part of my life every day. So.
Maya, would you like to say anything or tell us the inspiration for your art piece, or, really, or you can say, no, I don't want to say anything right now.
So I actually did the bottom piece for the honorable mention one in class. I really enjoyed that project. I think that Ms. Matoka does a amazing job at creating assignments that like push you to think outside the box, and that also push you to think of new ways to just create, but also create pieces that can be used later, like in portfolios. So the printmaking one, it was inspired by a dream that I had, specifically stuff like sleep paralysis. I wanted to like take the fear that's usually associated with that and then turn it into like encapsulating beauty. And then the painting I did after a trip to an antique mall. I saw the robot and I took a picture of it, and my mother said, I have one just like that. And so I decided to paint it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And we are so very proud of you and are excited to see what the future will hold for you. And I'm sure it's many great things. It sounds like you're off to a great start. So congratulations. Yeah. And as I always tell our guests, you will not offend us in any way, because we know how busy both our teachers and our students are if they decide to leave after that part. So, but you're welcome to stay. So thanks, Maya. And thanks, Ms. Matoka, to not only you, but Ms. Hale and Ms. Mervine. We really have a very strong art department, even starting with Miss DeVoe now, going all the way through. It's pretty impressive, and it's great to see. I'm always amazed because not only are they great artists, but they're also great students. And that is not always the case when you're in other schools. It's kind of like people sort of go one track or the other, and our kids are so well-rounded. So, and Maya's obviously a pillar for that. So congratulations again. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Holland. We were talking about, people keep asking me, and I'm sure asking many of the folks in the audience, how's school? What's it like this year? And I often talk about, it's so good because it sounds like school again, and we're back into some of what we consider a natural rhythm. So Ms. Holland and I were talking a little bit about Nights Kids, our after school program. So I'll turn that over.
Well,
to you.
first I want to share, if you were you were all here at the board meeting last week, but the video that you saw at the last board meeting, we could play it again, because that is still what is happening at the elementary school. So kids are happy, teachers are happy. We are just enjoying being back together 5 days a week. But I purposely have walked into our Nights Kids program, because if you remember last year, we didn't get to have it at all. And I spoke with Nikki Steele, and I told her I would give her a shout out tonight. She has done an amazing job bringing that program back. We have high school students that are the counselors for those children. My daughter's one of those. And so the high school kids are getting engaged with our little guys, and the students, when we call at dismissal time, the students for Nights Kids, they come running, and we have to, Miss Lotz and I have to tell them, I know you're excited to get to Nights Kids, but slow down. And from what I know, and I can look over to Rebecca Shipman, as far as, COVID is concerned, we are having success with our after-school program, which we were worried about last year, which is why we didn't have the after-school program. The nights kids, they're able to keep the kids in each group grade level cohorted. So we have had success in our after-school program. The kids are getting homework done, playing outside, having their snack time, enjoying the high school counselors. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Nights Kids with having it gone for a year and to bring it back. And it's so smooth. As administrators, we don't have to worry about that program, and it runs from 3:15 until 6 o'clock. So I reached out to Shannon and I said, I want to make sure the board knows that we brought this program back and we're having success in all aspects.
Thank you,
Anything
Ms.
else you want
Holland.
me to share?
No, that's great. And we recognize that was one of the things last year that our family said, do you offer this? And at that point, we weren't in a position that we could. And I know that's a big help to our families, many of our families, to be able to know that their kids are not only in safe care, but are really having a good time and enriched after school. So thanks to Ms. Steele and to all our Nights Kids counselors. They really do amazing jobs. So thanks, Ms. Holland.
Thank you.
I have 3 other really exciting things to share. The first one is I would like to congratulate Mr. Smith. He has been appointed to the Professional Educators Preparation and Standards Commission, which sounds not as much fun as you would think it is. But with that being said, Mr. Smith was actually part of a Senate bill. This was a Senate appointment. This group advises the State Board of Education on policy regarding preparation, licensure, continuing educations, and standards of conduct for public school educators. And as Mr. Smith would tell you, when you look at the other folks that are on that committee, it's some of the most influential educators in the state. So he's going to be joining a pretty strong group of folks, and to be nominated, you have, again, to be nominated through, a Senate process is no small deal. So congratulations, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith, I do have to say, I was a little disappointed to read that in a newsletter that I got over the weekend and didn't get that firsthand. So you and I can talk afterwards on that one.
Let's hope not. And then happy to share that we received, and when I say we, myself and Dr. Graham, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Holland have all been asked to, by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, they're hosting an inaugural conference called the AIM Conference, which is an Accelerate, Invigorate, and Motivate conference, which will be held at the end of November, first part of December. Our administrative team has been asked to present on our continued global diversity work, and specifically the initiatives the team has implemented to draw a more diverse pool of talent through our teacher applicants. And so some of the things we'll be talking about is our recruitment video, our direct outreach to schools of education with emphasis on HBCUs, revamping our presence on our LinkedIn page and our social media presence, and just some of the different ideas that we've gotten from our own staff to try to be thoughtful about that, and how we're continuing to work with our staff as in general. So we're excited to be leaders in that area and to have been asked. How we got asked is actually one of the people that is helping to present that conference works for one of the schools of education, had gotten our letter and said, hey, this is really cool. We recognize this. What are you doing in other areas? So that was how we were identified, and they reached out to us to do that. So I'm excited to share that work. And then lastly, I have been asked to present at the Office of Charter Schools Symposium for new charter schools that have been approved by the State Board of Education and that are in their planning year. It's the emphasis on that is going to be around sort of on the ground expert, like, hey, you're starting a new school. What are some things that you could learn from? And so we're going to be talking. I've done several things throughout the state on board governance. So I'll be sharing some of those things, as well as the head of school relationship and board workings, stakeholder communications, family recruitment, and budgeting. So those are the things that I'll be spending with some of our newer schools, trying to make sure that the next generation of charter schools is got a strong start. So it's kind of exciting to see all the ways that we're having an opportunity to actually live our mission by service. And so we're certainly trying to be exemplars in that area. And that is all I have.
All right. That was action packed. Thank you. All right, next up, we will move on to old business and start with the committee reports. So safe schools.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Amy Carr, and we are prepared to bring a September update. To kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stein to go over some of the legislative and kind of overall climate, what's going on at the state and local levels.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. So new information. So there was a mask mandate that was put in Mecklenburg County starting on August 18th. And that mask mandate requires masks inside, all inside spaces. President Biden has since come out and talked about wanting to have a booster shot available. And this is to help bolster immunity due to the Delta variant. And I think we're missing a slide on stuff. I'm going to back up in just a minute, guys. And then also we're going to be holding a vaccination clinic on Monday, October 18th, which will allow staff and community members easier access to both the booster and seasonal flu vaccines. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our families as safe as possible. Also on August 30th, the governor signed a bill, which is SB 654. I think we have an old presentation, so I'm going to flip that over in just a minute, but I'll finish my new part and then I'll do that when Ms. Carr is speaking. So they signed a new bill, and this new bill, SB 654, had a wide ranging, it was a coronavirus, what they call an omnibus bill, right? Which is basically throw everything you want into this bill. And so it covered such things as graduation requirements, grading of schools, driving privileges for students, and the use of remote instruction. One of the requirements of this new bill that will directly affect this board is that this bill requires a board to revisit their masking policy monthly. So even if there is not going to be a change, you still have to affirm that vote every month as part of that. Another bit of new information is for the first time, LNC needed to quarantine an entire classroom due to COVID-19 infection numbers and a suspected cluster. That class will be out of school this week, but they have been receiving direct remote instruction during their time in quarantine. So with that being a whole class, we were able to accommodate that and make sure that they're continuing to get high quality instruction and contact from all of their regular teachers. Because of the increased contact tracing needs, LNC has contracted with a nursing placement agency to secure a nurse for COVID-related issues at our elementary school. He is actually being trained tomorrow, and he's going to work in conjunction with Ms. Shipman. And that will allow us to have, two people that are helping to support our families, to help contact trace, and to do all the necessary paperwork and communications. It will also allow us to shift. If you remember, we were in a pilot for COVID rapid testing. When that pilot ended, schools were given a couple of different options. And by us bringing a nurse on board, we're going to be able to move more testing in-house and get more tests. We were originally going to go with a vendor, but the problem with the vendor is that they had very limited ability to service our school on multiple days. And so that's not really going to do what we want it to do. And so in addition to needing that additional support in other COVID-related areas, this ability for us to be able to implement a testing program where parents don't have to seek a test, because right now, and Ms. Shipman, I'm sure will speak to this, tests are really hard to come by. It's unfortunate, but what has happened is that there are so many companies that if people aren't vaccinated, they need tests. Because of the Delta variant, they need tests. So we're having folks, there's a significant lag time in finding the test, and then depending on what type of test, getting results. So we feel like this will be a better service to our families. So those are the new information that's available since our last board meeting.
Hey, Ms. Stein, just real quick on the testing side. So where would we get the actual testing, the test kits, basically?
Sure, they'll come from the state. They're running a program and we've already reached out to them to pivot to do to this new testing. And I got to tell you, we expected to have the vendor on board since we started, and it's been one delay after another. They have yet to step foot in this building. And so it was very clear that they were not going to be able to service our needs. And so Ms. Shipman, not only did we participate in the pilot, but she actually also serves on an advisory committee for the testing program. And so she has some connections that have allowed us to quickly make those connections. So I believe we've been in contact with them and we should be able to get those pretty quickly from the state. They'll come directly from the state. And I believe that comes from a federal allotment.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Stein, what are the criteria you use to determine whether quarantine in our classroom? How many cases do you?
Sure. So, and I will, does Ms. Shipman have a microphone? Thank you. Because she's going to jump in here too. So we work with the health department. We were in close contact in this situation to determine whether or not it was the right call. And you're looking for a couple of different things. One, a potential cluster. And a cluster, we're looking for students that have not had, some of the students that Ms. Shipman contact trace, we can directly tie it to some type of community spread. Somebody in a household, somebody on a baseball team that they're on. We have direct contact. Sometimes there isn't enough information. So then you can't definitively say it came from school, but you can't definitively say it did not come from school. So if you have a situation where you have what we consider 5 or more cases, that's when we're going to look to say, okay, we can't rule those out. We really need to look at that. Now, when we talked to the health department, they actually said we could go, or recommended we go 7 to 10 cases. But the truth of the matter is it becomes an operational impact, right? When you're having multiple kiddos being out. So in the case of the 4th grade classroom, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Shipman, we had the 5 that we could not connect to community spread, but we also had a few that we could. So now you're getting up into 7 kids out of a room or 8, and then it is probably just best to let's take a pause, and knowing that we can deliver high quality direct instruction while they're at home, that makes that a little bit easier. But it is a combination of operational impact, working with the health department, and then looking for those cases and whether there are connections or not. Ms. Shipman, did I leave anything out?
No, that is correct. Keeping in mind that also, while we had our own COVID cases, we also had students who were absent due to other exposures outside of school. And so when the attendance based on that small cluster that we identified, and then attendance was down also from the exposures, we were, as Ms. Stein said, it was more beneficial for our students and our families for us to go that route. So that's what we chose to do, even though, as she stated, we were not required to do that by the health department.
In the bill that the governor signed.
Yep.
You mentioned that there's some direction on the use of remote instruction. Does that impact our decision from the beginning of the year?
No, it is. So it allows charter schools to be able to service kids when they're out on quarantine. So, and you would think that would be, I'm sure it would be surprising to most people to know that really was not an option for charter schools, but it really was not. And so there was a big push at the state level to do something to provide relief for classrooms that needed to do that. Now, I will say, I know there are some charter schools that are continuing to push because some would like to offer more of a remote learning academy. I do not believe that will ever be in the best interest of LNC. We don't, based on our curriculum and our staffing and the quality that we want for our students, we're not in a position to do that. But for right now, this is really specifically, can we best service our kids if we need to do quarantines, if we ever have to do, and some schools have actually quarantined whole schools, right? Like elementary or a middle or whatever that level is. So that's where it gave some clarity to that. It also provided some clarity beyond that just there, it was kind of gray in the statutes about remote learning days. And so it helped to tighten that up as well.
This time, how
Yes.
many total days does the classroom have to be quarantined?
And is that determined by us or is that determined by the state?
Right. So as a reminder, the health department did not force us to do this. We did this out of an abundance of caution. And the way it fell, it ended up where the students were out for 10 days. So and I'll let Ms. Shipman speak to best practice, but if there was, and there could be, the health department, if we ever got to a certain point, they could make us do that. But I think we will always be on the more proactive side because we want to do what's in the best interest of
So
our
roughly,
students.
they might miss.
They're
a
missing
week,
5.
5 full
Yeah,
days.
so
Yep.
it was a weekend,
Mhm.
5 days, and then we have the long weekend ahead. So in
And
the
plan
end,
is
it'll
they'll
be,
come back on Tuesday.
that's correct. They'll come back on Tuesday. That will be 10 days, and that's a really good period of time, we felt. The average that we're seeing with other schools is usually in that 7 to 10 days is usually what they're doing. But Ms. Shipman, would you like to speak to that at all?
No, that's exactly correct. And 10 days it would be the quarantine if you were exposed to someone. So it totally worked out with the holiday and the route that we went when we got confirmation of that 5th positive case. And so it worked out lovely for us. So the children only actually missed 5 instructional days.
The only
Right.
thing that changes, they learn remote. They'll come back, they'll go right back in the classroom setting. pick up
That's
where they left
correct.
off.
So what has happened, and if we have questions about that, I'm sure Miss Holland would be happy to answer that, but literally they went back, though, just that class went back into remote learning, and then so their teachers then would Zoom in with them during their time period for doing
That was the
instruction.
piece I was going to mention, is that it's made possible because the entire class is out. So each
don't
time
have-
that class would move to a teacher, well, that class is not actually there in person. So now that teacher is available to Zoom with them, and that's how they're able to do that. Whereas last year we had Wednesday seminar days and office days and hybrid days. And so, that made that different. But when you quarantine the class, then your teachers are available to continue with the same
Right.
kind of quality
And this
instruction
is
they
the
get in
first
person.
class that we've done this with so far.
Correct. And that was part of because some people say, well, why can't we do remote instruction when one kiddo is out? And that's because we don't have shortened hours. We don't have Wednesday seminars, and a teacher is teaching all day in front of live students. And so there isn't that same flexibility that we did have, but that's why if we are going to err on the side of caution, because when the whole class went, then they had the opportunity to say, okay, when you hit a certain number of students, it makes sense for the quality of instruction to make sure that they're being able to be provided with direct instruction.
Thank
You bet. Okay, Ms. Carr.
Okay, so we are going to cover the local health metrics. As we kind of discussed previously, the Delta variant is a lot more contagious and has a higher viral load in infected people. The last update for Mecklenburg County was on August 25th. They update every Wednesday, and then they're usually published Friday morning. All county metrics represent an increase over the last 14 days, which isn't surprising. It's unfortunate, but not surprising. Our daily new COVID cases had a 7-day moving average of 564 compared to 288 on July 28th. That was the last data update that was available before our board meeting on August 2nd. So I compared those two. We had a percent positive, had a 7-day moving average of 13.6 compared to 10.9 on 7/28. Over the past 7 days, 421 people are hospitalized with COVID-19 infections at acute care facilities compared to 128 on July 28th. Approximately 56% of the total population of Mecklenburg County is partially vaccinated, with 52% being fully vaccinated. 50% of our 12 to 17-year-olds are at least partially vaccinated. It was interesting because the update this week or last week, they must have somebody in their graphics department that was raring to go because a lot of their graphics changed over the last week. So in the last update, we were able to tell you the number of 12 to 17-year-olds who are fully vaccinated, but that information was not included. They included the partially vaccinated this time. So if you're looking to compare those two numbers, it'll be slightly different. Okay, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Shipman. So as you all may remember, or if you have not heard this before, LNC does have a dashboard where we keep our community informed of the number of cases, either confirmed or presumptive, and the number of exposures at each of our campuses. We started this process in October of 2020. And we did that because that was the first time, if you remember, we were in Plan C during that first quarter. So there was really no need to report this information because nobody was here. As soon as we moved to go into Plan B, we started this. It's been published every week on our website. So Ms. Shipman, I'd love for you to be able to explain. This update was as of yesterday. She updates it every Wednesday evening. So if you could go through our latest update, please.
Sometimes later than others. So
Yeah,
for
I
those
was
of you who
looking
try
for
to
it.
look at it at
Yeah.
4 o'clock, I'm not currently ending my workday at 4 o'clock just yet. So it usually updates a little later in the evening than that. And a good reason for that is because we're still trying to make sure that we have received as many test results for the week prior. So for example, our dashboard starts on Monday and ends on the next Sunday. So if you called me on Friday or Saturday and told me that you thought your child may have COVID and you've gotten a test, chances of you having your result back chances of you having your result back by Wednesday sometimes are a little slim because of the load that they have right now. So I spend a lot of time on the phone trying to verify test results. So it posts on Wednesday, as you said. This is our numbers for August 23rd through August 29th. Obviously, you can tell just by the numbers, the difference between vaccinated and not vaccinated. Our elementary school students are not able to be vaccinated, but they are still just as active as our middle school and high school students. So at the middle school and high school level, we had 9 positive cases with only a few reported exposures outside of school, none inside the school as of yet. At the elementary school, we did have 22 positive cases. The things that I can't always reflect on the dashboard because there's only so much space is that 55% of those 22 students I can place with positive COVID either in their home or at a baseball tournament where they were exposed to someone and then were symptomatic and became positive. Grandma came for a visit and was positive. So 55% of those 22 I can definitively place somewhere else that they were exposed to COVID, the majority of which is in their home with a sibling or a parent. There are other things available on the next slides for the dashboard, which I don't believe that we have here, but if you're looking for additional information on things like clusters and symptoms that you should look out for, that's one of the things that we really want to make sure that we're covering too, is that we now in this climate that we are in need to look at our kids every day, realize that we are in a pandemic, that you should be looking for symptoms every day. It's not, oh, my child was exposed, I need to keep an eye out for symptoms. Every day we should be looking at our children for symptoms, and we should be assuming if they have them, sore throat, headache, fatigue, fever, chills, runny nose, allergy type symptoms, any of those things, we should assume it's COVID until it's not. So while your child might normally have allergies during this season of the year, this time of year, you should assume it's COVID until it's not. And then, with the testing that we're going to have available, we'll be able to help you with that. And we'll talk through that. You can certainly give me a call and we can talk through it. My number's available on the second slide of that dashboard. I answer it all the time. Ms. Stein also mentioned our COVID vaccination event that we're going to have on the 18th. We're also going to have one on September 9th that will include flu shots as well for the general public and for our students and our staff. So all of that kind of information is available on the dashboard as well.
Ms. Shipman, can you speak to just briefly, because we're about to come up on a holiday weekend.
We
So-
are.
So what would your best advice to families and folks as we're approaching a holiday weekend?
My best advice would be to make sure you wear your mask, even when you're with friends or family. Make sure that you're keeping your distance, especially from people that you don't normally live with. You can do that and still have a good time. There are lots of people who are doing it. So you can do that and still have a good time. If you have been exposed or you feel like you've been exposed, call me before you send your child to school, please. Yes, if you want to email your teacher or your administrator, that's fine, but they're just going to send it to me. So just save it and just send it all to me. They cannot answer, well, they might answer your questions, but they're not supposed to answer your questions. They're going to forward it to me. They have been told anything COVID related is not what they're for. They're for teaching our children. I am for COVID. Our new nurse, Nurse Chris, we are for COVID. So if you have any exposures, you have symptomatic children, you have anything like that, please contact me before you send your children to school. Their absences are excused. They will get their work. They have time to make it up. Please do not send sick children to school.
Ms. Shipman. We okay with?
Yeah, so given the new Senate bill, we do have to approve, our masking recommendation once per month. Since we did that, I think the beginning of August, we'll go ahead and do it again for this meeting so that we can just make sure we're compliant with the new Senate bill. So given the current data, the current local trends and all the things that are going on COVID related, the Safe Schools Committee would like to recommend that we continue mandatory masking for all staff and students while indoors, and including visitors as well. Anybody that comes inside our well, more than 4 walls, but the walls of our buildings, we ask, or we would recommend that they be mandatorily masked.
That we accept the proposal of the Safe Schools Committee.
Have it?
This is Ridgely, I'll second.
Any other questions or further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries.
And I think we did,
Last
yep,
slide.
one more slide.
So we jumped the gun on that.
No, no,
Alright,
no, it was,
well-
we did a little out of order and it's great to, we have that behind us. Whoop. Wrong truck.
So just so everybody kind of knows what's going to happen, before the Senate bill came out, there wasn't really much that we thought the Safe Schools Committee was going to have to recommend, given the climate of COVID. But it is certainly our commitment to you that as we continue through this process, we will be continuing to monitor the local data, the guidance, anything that's changing on the legislative front. Anything COVID related, we will monitor. We had a meeting on Monday morning discussing Ms. Shipman's dashboard, getting an update of what's been going on, kind of in LNC. We talked about our protocols, there were some certain tweaks that were made. So we just want to commit to the community that, well, now we have to approve the mask mandate every month, but outside of that, we are still meeting as an active committee and reviewing all things related now that we have our internal data. We will continue to layer our protections. I think the very beginning, I used a Swiss cheese analogy. Every protection we have is like a slice of Swiss cheese. Every slice has a hole in it, but when we stack them on top of each other, we cover those holes. Those are the things that we're looking at. We can't do one thing in singular. We have to do everything together to be able to keep our community as safe as possible. Given the level of spread in our community at 13.9% positivity rate, that's actually probably lower than what it really is, because that only accounts for people that choose to go get tested. We know that sometimes people either quarantine themselves or choose not to go get tested. But anyways, given the level of community spread, we will expect cases inside the school walls. There really is, unfortunately, there isn't anything until the numbers start dropping. We're going to do our very best to make sure that it does not spread further. So, and having said that, if there is something that we see, and Ms. Shipman, I think last week she and I talked probably every day. So, and I know she and the admin team were closely monitoring what was going on. And if there's any time that we feel that we will need to make an adjustment in any of our layers of protocol or mitigation strategies, we will do that. Some adjustments were made last week. There were adjustments to seating. We adjusted how the desks are facing in the classroom so that we can minimize the children, talking towards each other. We made some adjustments at recess. While the children are not required to be mastering outside play, if there were students who were stationary, like doing sidewalk chalk or sitting on a curb talking to each other, we asked them to go ahead and put their mask on just so that we can take that extra precaution. If there's excuse me, we also constantly look at the protocols that we had last year, like one-way hallways and all those other things. If at some point we feel that that would be beneficial, we could come together as a committee and really discuss that and take a look at that. So, excuse me. So I just wanted to assure the community out there that we are continuing to, excuse me, look at those protocols.
And one last thing I'm going to say for the Safe Schools Committee, thank you, Ms. Carr. But one thing I'd like to say is some people, COVID for a lot of folks can be scary. And we want to recognize and acknowledge that there are a lot of feelings and everybody has differing family circumstances. And to that end, please understand, we know that it can be difficult depending on how that's impacting families or has impacted families. However, we are not going to make changes that aren't based in data, because I think there are, I've received some parent comments and they've asked, and they've been in that case respectful of, would you consider doing X, Y, and Z? And the truth is we are trying to maintain in-person learning and the most normal experience we can, right? So we have to balance all of those things, and we use our data to look and say, okay, where does a change need to be made? And if we change too many things at once, you actually don't know which ones had impact or not had impact. And so it is not at all that we are not open to all of those things. We just want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that is thoughtful, that still, again, tries to keep kids in school, but not only just keep them in school, also tries to maintain the environment that what I've personally seen, and the principals can attest this, the kids are starting to flourish again. And that's what we want. We want them to come to school and to feel excited to be here. And to do that, we want to make sure we maintain as many opportunities in a safe manner. So just recognizing we will change if needed, but we want to make sure that that is done looking at the data behind that and tracing to say, okay, we've seen a pattern, we need to make a change. So that's what we will continue to do. And I think that's it, unless there are questions for Ms. Carr, Ms. Shipman, or myself.
Just a follow-up question. Amy, you mentioned that there likely are to be, cases inside the LNC walls. Can you just speak to the communication protocols as it relates to exposures and clusters?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So again, the Safe Schools Committee met on Monday, and we talked about this extensively. And the way that we kind of see communication is it's kind of a layer of protection. When we have a COVID positive case, or Ms. Shipman gets notified of a COVID positive case, she does extensive contact tracing, she does extensive research, she looks like 48 hours before the COVID positive diagnosis or symptom, an onset of symptoms. And she kind of goes to the gamut and looks for where are the exposures. And we're looking for the exposures as defined by the health department and what's outlined in the toolkit. And once we determine who those exposures are, Ms. Shipman then does a communication with the families of that either exposed student or staff member. And we go from there. Right now, that was our procedure for last year. We have continued that procedure for this year. We did talk about the dashboard and the cases from last week and talked like if we had adjusted our communication process, if we had broadened the circle to include those outside of just those that are exposed. And again, the communication, the protection mechanism is, if you have an exposed student, then we can go ahead and get that student quarantined and minimize the risk that student, minimize to hopefully zero, that student would then transmit it to somebody else within LNC. So that's kind of where our protection lies, is to identify who we need to quarantine, communicate with those families, and make sure that we have identified all the exposed people. If at any point we determine that we need to expand that, where if we had notified additional individuals and that would have made a difference, then we would absolutely move to that. Looking at what happened, on the dashboard last week and talking through that in committee, we didn't feel that that was necessary at this point. So as it kind of stands, we will keep our policy from last year in communications where we will directly communicate with those that are exposed as defined by the health department. And then if any point, if that protection is not enough, it's not enough just to quarantine the exposed individuals, then we will certainly look at that further.
I have a question. I feel like what I saw on Meet the Teacher night for my son's elementary school was that there was no more plexiglass, but I think we did have plexiglass in the classrooms last year, and I just wonder why the decision was made to remove them, and could that have possibly helped, especially with this class that had clusters, to maybe stop the spread?
Sure, that's a great question. We can certainly speak about that. Ms. Shipman can talk to that as well. Yes, in some classrooms, there was plexiglass in places where we couldn't have that separation. That would not have affected the fourth grade classroom. There was never plexiglass placed in between those. At the beginning of the year, if we all remember, we thought Delta, at that point, the data was not what it was now. And so when we talked about having more normal operations, we allowed our staff to move into basically what had been sort of their normal operations pre-COVID. And a lot of our teachers like to group students because they do collaborative work. And that was one of the things that had been missing from the year before. We determined that doing that in that setting was one of the things that we changed back and went to forward facing for everybody. They'll still do collaborative work. They'll just do it in a more safe way. So it would not have impacted in that way. And we are, again, that's one of the mitigation strategies that we're looking at to see if we're going to see, say, as an example, a classroom that has tables that we cannot separate. If we see that they're spread amongst students there, then that would be one of the triggers that we would pull. But the teachers would tell you that it is an isolation of the students. They can't communicate well with one another. And so we don't want to, again, go to the most restrictive environment until we have the data that says that we should. So Ms. Shipman, anything else?
Pretty much that is exactly it. The only thing that I would add to that is that the plexiglass really changes the mood and the atmosphere for the child. It makes it seem like it's more dangerous at school. I worry about the social emotional piece that adds when it doesn't change how we would do contact tracing. It doesn't change how we would determine an exposure or a close contact. For us with the toolkit, it is close contacts are so much different than they were last year since we are all masked.
Yes.
According to the toolkit, if we are all masked, there is not an exposure. So a plexiglass would not change that. It only, to me, it only says to the children that we're so separate and divided and we're not a classroom group anymore.
Yes, go. There's one behind you. There you go.
So it's kindergarten, first and second that sit at tables. And we have a second grade teacher here that before she became an administrator, they're not at their tables long. You know, they're moving into different groups. They're on the floor, they're at centers. So it's not like older students that are sitting more at their desks for longer periods of time. There's a lot of movement within the class. And so again, I think we're letting our data speak. I'm in close communications with Ms. Shipman. And, you know, the data is going to let us know when we need to make any changes.
And please don't take this. This is a great question. And I
Yes,
think we
great
have to-
question.
we
I'm
do-
glad you asked it so we could share.
That's right. And we do need to look at things. And I wish I could say that we may never have to go back there, but we may. But the truth of the matter is I would, and again, I'll welcome the building principals. I think the reason that school sounds like school and the kids are interacting the way they were, it was very sterile last year. And I don't know how to best describe that. When you would walk into a classroom, the kids were very compliant, but they were also not, and they were engaged with their teacher, but they were just very quiet and very to themselves. And now school is school. They're interacting with one another. They found joy in that collaboration. And so we'd like to make sure that we're looking at not only what the benefits are, but also what we would be giving up, not just with this decision, but with all the decisions.
I think too, that while we want to be safe, that we need to also remember that these kids, for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, these kids are still doing their regular things outside of school also. So, they're still going to Chick-fil-A and they're still going to baseball and gymnastics and all of these things too. So while we do want to keep them as safe as we can at school, our environment here is basically what they're living outside of school as well.
So, Ms. Stein, I'd just like to take a second and thank the Safe Schools Committee. I was reading something last night on the Charlotte Observer. They do a really good job of just tracking what different school systems are doing. So, theme of this seems to be facts and data. So, over 50 school districts have reversed their policy from mask optional at the start of school to mask required. Mask required is now 108 of 115 districts in North Carolina. Overwhelming majority, and we made it right out of the gate. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
We have to credit Ms. Shipman because I'm
Yes.
telling you, if she could have talked to all of those districts, I don't see a way. But it just didn't make any sense. There was not a way to actually do it any other way with the quarantining. And so you just made it so crystal clear and fact-based and data-based, and the committee continues to be objective and fact-based and data-based. Thanks, Ms. Shipman. We're lucky to have you.
All right, next up on the agenda, global diversity and inclusion. Ms. Ridgely.
So we were very excited to have our first full committee meeting with all of our stakeholders and members on August 26th. And I just wanted to kind of share this with everyone that 2 years ago, we sat in the middle school media center with Ms. Stein, and all the administrators that are on our committee and teachers and students and parents. And we had a conversation about the diversity of our students. And then we had a conversation about the diversity of our staff. And so I am so excited and proud of our admin to hear that they are now going to be at a conference and be leaders and share how you take something out of a conversation with a committee with different stakeholders and you actually take it from a discussion and thought to an action plan. So thank you so much for doing that. So we did have our first meeting and we started off with the reading of our committee's objectives. And I think it's so important for us to continue to share that our objective of GD&I here at LNC is to give students the best chance for success in our current fast-paced and increasingly integrated world. We must expose them to experiences and immerse them in situations that expand their awareness, appreciation, and understanding of cultures, languages, traditions other than their own. And I think it's important for us to always remind ourselves about what our GD&I mission is, because as we look to social media and other media outlets, it can very quickly become disinformation and misinformation. So at the high school back to school night, Ms. Stein shared with all the parents that attended a slideshow on what GD&I is at LNC. And then that was done as well in the middle school and will also be done next week in the elementary school. So we just want to make sure that we are continuing to be transparent and very clear what it is GD&I is doing in all of our schools and what our mission is. So our annual goals are remaining the same, and we have them in 3 different categories. The first goal being to facilitate teacher and administration programming modules that create alignment and understanding of the LNC values of diversity and inclusion. The second goal being to develop and deliver consistent age-appropriate student programming solutions that cultivate an awareness and understanding of diversity and inclusion. And goal 3, to research, prioritize, and adopt best practices that foster and support a diverse school-wide community. And so as always, we remain very busy. And so this past September, we have had teacher training that was well attended with positive feedback. And we have another teacher training on implicit bias coming up on September 16th. Also under goal 1, the administration continues to do its book study and conversation on unconscious bias. Under goal 2, the High School Diversity Council, I am excited to share, had their largest turnout ever with a diversification of students of race, culture, sexual orientation, political preference, religious preference. So we were really excited to hear from the high school students because they are pretty pumped up that they have got, you know, a large amount of students that are ready to engage in conversations, dialogue, difference. And we know our high school kids are very active. So we're really looking forward to this school year. Also, the student council and interclub are going to start kind of partnering in with GD&I. And so the student council got together to discuss GD&I and what that means from a standpoint in terms of their student council. And also they came up with an idea to kind of integrate the different clubs. So they wanted to have a leader from each club kind of blend in with GD&I because, you know, we so often think in terms of GD&I is just race. And so these students are really picking up that there are different identity domains. And so they kind of were thinking outside that box and expanding what diversity and inclusion means. And that means bringing together leaders from all the different clubs in the high school. In relation to goal 2 in the middle school, this past month, they did drop everything and talk, and their subject was cultural awareness and Hispanic heritage. For goal 2 in the elementary, the staff and admin, Ms. Blum shared with us, they are really kind of engaging with the students and getting them back in to being excited about school. So they have been focusing on really just kind of working with the staff and the teachers to kind of reinvigorate the GD&I mission in the elementary school and get activities going with the kids and ideas going, and also focusing on their virtual library. In terms of goal 3 for September, in terms of research and kind of best practices, the administration has been talking with a company that is called Nixon and Company. And they are a consulting firm that will be coming into Lake Norman Charter to do an assessment of our GD&I and give us best practice recommendations. So what we're looking at doing is having them come in and assess, you know, when we get together and we talk about, you know, how we want to implement GD&I and we train our teachers and we train our staff, we have our committee meetings and individual teachers come up with ideas. How are these then implemented in the classroom? So is the training that teachers are doing actually having an impact on the students in the classroom? Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Ms. Stein?
No, it's just, it's going to take it from having some wonderful training that Ms. Rogowski has offered to our staff to now having active dialogue with our staff in addition to the assessment. So we're really excited about that because we think that our staff has really been thoughtful around this area, and the opportunity to share and dialogue around it is only going to strengthen our goals.
And so moving on to October. For goal 1, we have decided that we are going to have implicit bias training for our board. So coming up on October 7th, Ms. Rogowski and I will be working together to do kind of a modified version of the implicit bias training that all of the administration and teachers do. Because we just felt it was important if we're having our teachers and our admin, you know, do this training, that for us as a board, that it would be very beneficial for us to do it as well and kind of have a debriefing session on it as well. So the board will be doing that modified training on October 7th. Under goal 2 for the high school for the upcoming month in October, it will be Indian Heritage and the Pride Parade. And for the middle school, they will also be doing Indian Heritage with Drop Everything and Talk. And then for goal 3, again, kind of coming back to the consultant, Nixon and Company, the admin is going to be looking at the logistical integration of the consulting in terms of, will this be on teacher professional development days or during staff meetings? So how are they actually going to kind of implement the consulting within the school day and the school frame? And that's all I have for this month. Are there any questions?
Is there a timeline for Nixon and Company and how long they'll be here? Like, are they giving actionable items or just giving an assessment?
Right, so they're going to be doing 2 things for us, and we're starting our relationship with them. So our staff this year has a pretty heavy PD requirement because of some state requirements, but we don't want to lose our momentum on the work we're doing in this area. So this year, what they'll be doing is they'll be coming, and we did figure out the logistics, where they're going to be coming to 2 faculty meetings. So in lieu of faculty meetings, which will be done electronically, they'll be coming in and meeting with our staff and starting to dialogue around best practice and, you know, the different trainings that we've already done. And then they will also do that assessment. And then beyond that, our hope is then to take it into next year, sort of to step 2. So it is dipping our toe in the water. And just as a reminder, every staff member is going to be taking at least a 3-hour training in addition to that. So they're having either implicit bias or classroom strategies around equity. So between that, the 2 sessions with Nixon and Company and the assessment, I mean, they're putting in well over 6 to 7 hours of diversity work, let alone what they're talking about in their professional learning communities amongst their teams. So I'm proud of what they're doing and the continued work towards that.
All right, thank you, Ridgely. I'm excited to go through the training in October. Looking forward to it. All right, so next up, the unnamed, generic named new strategic committee.
I'm happy to report that will be changing next month. I didn't want to spoil it, so I didn't retitle the presentation just yet until we formally announced it. But so essentially, I read the objective last meeting. It's just to help enrich the students' overall experience in academics, leadership, and service, while being mindful of their personal wellness, with a goal of going above and beyond traditional academics to help our students develop into well-rounded, community-minded young adults with leadership and other skills that can help them succeed in life and make positive impacts in their communities. We have 3, that sounds good. Oh, back one. Okay, so so we met August 25th, had a really great discussion with the current leadership team of the committee. We finalized our name and our mission statement. That was no small feat. So the mission of our committee, which it kind of spells out the name there, but the mission of our committee is to enrich each LNC student's overall learning experience above and beyond traditional academics in order to help students discover their passions and develop into well-rounded, healthy leaders who make positive impacts on their communities. We will do this through the lens of, drum roll please, total student development, holistic preparedness, readiness for the future, innovative thinking, visionary approach to education, and enriching extracurricular experiences. So we are the Thrive Committee. Hopefully that met expectations. I felt like last meeting we might have a little bit of a wah-wah, but no, I'm very pleased with the work that it came. I mean, this is such a broad topic and, with lots of important elements to it. And we wanted to make sure that we captured all of that. So we kind of thought it would be best done through an acronym. So, okay. And so for the upcoming month in September, our goals related to goal number 1, which is the K through 12 collegiate piece, is to continue discussions with college representatives and explore innovative enrichments at other K through 12 schools. As I said last month, we had Jen led 2 focus groups with our alumni, some of our alumni. She actually is going to do a presentation when I'm done talking kind of on some of the things that she found throughout that process. We had a really nice discussion in committee about that and kind of some, that's one nice data point. Where do we kind of go from here? So those are some of the things that we'll be kind of talking about as we continue our meetings in September. For goal 2 and 3, which is the leadership in action and day of service, we'll continue to work on our short-term goals, which is basically getting those 2 things up and running for the current school year. And then as we continue through this process, we'll flesh out long-term goals. I expect that to be largely centered. Did I go out? Oh, yeah, I largely expect that to be around the K through 12 collegiate piece, but we need to do some additional research and kind of start to formulate those goals. Okay, and I think that's it for me. So Jen, if you wouldn't mind sharing your.
I will dive in. Okay, so what did all of that mean, right? So this committee is looking at how do we keep LNC, how do we look at innovative thinking around education and keep LNC cutting edge? And the first thing we did was we talked to alumni. So we talked to some students about how did LNC prepare you for college and beyond. And the purpose of these focus groups was really just to start to identify themes that could then inform, which types of schools we want to go investigate. We want to ask these college representatives. So it really is just starting to formulate our thinking. So I'm going to do this real quick, Shannon. I'm going to bam, 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 because I know it's late. Here's who we talked to. We had a mix of gender and ethnicity among the 2 groups. We can just keep right on going. They graduated between the years of 2013 and 2019. That was very purposeful. We wanted kids who had been in college, actually in a normal college experience, not a COVID experience, and then those who were recently out of college as well. They went to a variety of schools, mostly large state schools with a variety of majors. Several of them happened to be in the STEM area, that's notable. And a couple went on to grad school and other careers. And so here's what we asked them. What is your ideal high school experience and how did LNC measure up? We asked them to describe a typical LNC student. We asked them, what would you say to someone now who was considering, maybe they got in the lottery and they were considering whether they should come. We really spent a lot of time talking about how prepared they are for college and careers. We asked them, what does LNC do best and what's its greatest challenge? And then we dug into the elements of our mission, our motto as well. So real quick, a couple themes that came up that were really strong and positive and should make us feel good. So one was this student first mentality. So just a strong sentiment that the faculty and the administration have the best interests of student front of mind. So across those questions, this theme came up over and over again. You could read quotes on your own. I included a couple direct quotes from the groups. The other themes were around staff, knowing how much the teachers care and staff care deeply about the students and their qualifications came up over and over again. This was a really fun one, just ties that bond. So there was a lot of talk about the rigor and the community coming together in a special way that creates these ties that bond for LNC students, just having the feeling that you went through something together, you did it. And even if we weren't best friends, we have this tie that bonds us. The values of an LNC student that came up were hardworking, disciplined, motivated, a lot of words in that category. Self-aware, I think that's notable. It is not every school, I think, that you would find that descriptor to come out. Passionate and involved. We also had significant discussions that we're going to get into more ongoing on our coursework, the rigor of our coursework, the offerings. In terms of college readiness, do I have another slide on that? I don't, so I will tell you now. They felt incredibly prepared, and they said compared to all of their peers, their roommates, their classmates from all different types of schools, they felt well prepared for college in terms of study habits, writing ability, and just general critical thinking skills. They were really prepared for college. That was widespread. There were some great discussions around the social aspects of LNC, the pluses and minuses of the size, the strong community, the culture. I guess the one negative thing that came up, and that was the competitive nature. We've addressed a lot of that since then. You know, we took away class rank since these groups of students would have graduated. So good to know that we're listening and addressing those things along the way. And then we dug in more on the leadership and service. So we'll be sharing more in-depth findings as we kind of validate some of those with the additional research, and it helps direct where the group's going to go. Yeah, we talked about that already. There you go.
Rapid fire. All right, well done. Very interesting to see the alumni results, and once again, sort of a good proof point of what we already know in terms of the educational experience. So awesome to see, but obviously doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities to improve. So great. All right. Next up, we will move on to new business. So we have a new body of work that we are standing up. We as the board leadership are working closely with the admin team to really understand the opportunities on the holistic approach to our current dress code. So we're starting with the purpose of the policy itself, the enforcement, and the ongoing monitoring. So there are no early findings to report at this time, other than conversations are happening, and we will continue to share updates in subsequent board meetings. So one thing that I did want to highlight is, I think, to call it my earlier comments, I think this is a great example of where we are committed as a community to improve the LNC experience. So we did receive a lot of feedback that is constructive, that is solution focused. We also received a lot that wasn't. So for the students and parents that took the time to offer opinions in a positive way, in a constructive way, thank you, because that's what we need. That will help us improve, and that's the basis for this work. So thank you. More to come. Just wanted to inform the broader LNC community of this body of work. So with that,
Question about that.
sure.
I think one of the themes that we've seen in the community feedback has been enforcement. And so while the policy is being worked on, is there an opportunity to maybe like loosen up on the enforcement of the old policy as maybe a temporary solution to address, some of the feelings of some of the social feelings that we're seeing in the communications from both students and parents?
So I'll field that one for now, which is, I don't think we know enough at this point to say that that should happen or that shouldn't happen. So as we continue to dig in and as we continue to understand, then we can make some of those decisions and figure out what our best path forward is. Okay. All right. So that takes care of our regular agenda items. Is there a motion to move into closed session?
Jen, so moved.
Oh, got to read it out, Jen. Yeah.
All right, I motion that we move into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A6.
This is Nicole, I second.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We're now in closed session.